Good evening, Reverend. Thank you very much for your time. Now, as the current Dean of St. Mary's Cathedral, you occupy the same position Desmond Tutu first occupied in 1975.
Yes.
Which, of course, was to propel him to even higher offices, most notably Bishop of Johannesburg and then later the Archbishop of the Anglican Church.
Good evening, Vuyo. Indeed, yesterday we celebrated 90 years first since the St. Mary's Church was declared a cathedral. But its history dates back to 1886 in terms of its presence, providing prophetic ministry within the city of Johannesburg. And then in 1929, it was consecrated as the Anglican Cathedral in the city of Johannesburg. So 2019 marks 90 years of mission and ministry and prophetic ministry that the church has actually been given. And if you go back, and of course, during the time of Archbishop Desmond Tutu, during his time as dean, that was a crucial time within the history of our country. But if you look at the history of the cathedral, and you even go back to the deans before him, one thing you see consistent about the cathedral in Johannesburg, the St. Mary's Cathedral, is that it remained a prophetic voice for the voiceless. It actually was a prophetic presence within the city of Johannesburg, looking at the needs of the people in the city, the needs of God's people around. And that is why all the deans, even before Desmond Tutu, but more so during his time, were consistent in being a prophetic voice, in ensuring that the ills of our society are brought to the fore, so that the people of God and the children of God can enjoy life as God has desired them to do without any hindrance in terms of that process. So it begins all there, that the cathedral has always been a prophetic voice. And therefore, as you know, that also Arch, 1975, served there as actually a dean, and later became a bishop of actually Johannesburg. And of course, his role and contribution, there's lots of volumes written about it. I don't even have to tell you about it. All of us know worldwide and within this country. And of course, in our reflection as we face the challenges in the city, particularly where the cathedral is located, we thought it would actually be one of the things to be addressed, to actually celebrate Desmond Tutu. But as we also, together with other stakeholders, reflect on how to deal with the challenges in that particular precinct.
Now, you've obtained permission from Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu, together with your partners, to do what exactly?
Yeah. So how this thing is structured is that as we have reflected how to celebrate Desmond Tutu, but one thing is true, is that if you look at abroad and in the world, Desmond Tutu has been celebrated, received many honors. But where he actually served originally, the city that produced him has not celebrated him. If you actually look at it, we have done nothing to really celebrate him. And then as a church, we reflected that perhaps this is the time where we can actually partner with stakeholders and actually see how we can celebrate Archbishop Desmond Tutu. So our proposal, which we presented yesterday to the mayor of the city of Johannesburg, which is detailed, which we call the Cathedral Precinct, is a request for the city, is a request to government as well, and all the spheres of government, to consider declaring the area around the St. Mary's Cathedral Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Of course, we've been having informal conversations about these things, but for the first time now we've been able to put a formal document on our reflections and what it means. And of course, the trustees of our diocese have approved it. The parish council of the cathedral have approved it. And actually also the Desmond and Leah Tutu Legacy Foundation have also approved it, including Desmond Tutu himself has given us permission to say, you can use my name in whatever way to celebrate my contribution. So our request and presentation was to say to the city, this is our reflections, and hopefully we'll engage with the city, because a lot of the things we're proposing have to be approved by the city or the province or the national government.
Take us through some of the key sort of elements. What's going to be in this precinct?
Well, one of the key elements, what we have applied first as part of the first process, we have submitted an application where the cathedral can firstly be considered as a national heritage site. And that application is in motion, in progress. All the details are there. I think we're waiting for the processes and hear what the outcome of that. So that was the first proposal. And the first proposal, we are saying how around the cathedral, where we would say it will be a cathedral precinct, especially at Hook Street, that Hook Street, which is directly in front of the cathedral, to have some aspects that celebrate the life of Desmond Tutu. Either you put a bust, or either you put an arch for an arch, or in whatever form that we deem fit. And also we're proposing the renaming of some of the streets around the cathedral. But more so, we looked at Risick Street as a possible street that we want to propose and request that it be renamed. Because if you look at it, it touches two spheres of government in one particular street. And therefore, that would be an appropriate street to actually celebrate him. But of course, it depends on the processes, but that is our request on the table. So what we're saying as well, inside the cathedral, what are some of the objects that we could put to actually celebrate Desmond Tutu? Remember, when you celebrate Desmond Tutu, he's an embodiment of our struggle. He's an embodiment of prophetic ministry. We may use him as an individual, but in actual fact, through him, you're celebrating all the stalwarts and all those who actually fought for our freedom. Because that's the norm that actually happens worldwide in cathedrals. So those are some of the key things that we've asked the city to actually look at. But the third point that we're asking at is whether the precinct around the cathedral can be cleaned up. Because Vuyo, it is very appalling at the moment, the way it was left to denigrate, the way it looks. It is painful, because a cathedral should actually be celebrated by a city. A cathedral should be an asset that we really hold to highest esteem. But now it was allowed that the environment should actually degenerate. So the third thing we're asking the city and the province and all those in governance is that let us reflect on sustainable ways to make sure that where we are going to celebrate this icon, it is actually an environment, worthy to actually do so. I can take you to the walk around the cathedral on an ordinary day. It was clean yesterday, only because there was a function in the cathedral. But on an ordinary day, you can't even walk. On an ordinary day, you can't even drive through the cathedral. So what we're also proposing to the city is to relook at the transportation modes that have been put around the cathedral, is to relook at the trading modes that have been put around the cathedral, and especially to see how best we can actually relocate some of the people, but yet still serve the people of God within that precinct. So those are the three key things for me. Of course, there's more details, but those are the three highlights I would say we've asked the city to actually, and the provincial government to actually consider.
Have any specific names been suggested for the renaming of the streets?
Of course, in our precinct plan, we do have, as I'm saying, we're suggesting Risick Street to be renamed after Desmond Tutu. We are suggesting De Villiers Street to be renamed under French Beta, who was one of the key people who fought the struggle until he had to end his actual term. But we're looking at also Wandra Street being turned to Simeon Nkwane. But we're looking at Plain Street perhaps being renamed to Archbishop Trevor Huddleston within this city. And those are some of the suggestions that we are putting forward to say, yes, when we celebrate Desmond Tutu, let that just be a prophetic celebration of those men and women of the cloth who actually made an indelible contribution in our struggle.
What is the attitude of the city?
It is a good attitude. We began this process, of course, when the previous when the previous team was there under Pakstau, and sadly he had to leave. But with Herman Mashaba having taken over, we've received a very welcoming attitude, a very cooperative attitude, and therefore, and that is why now it was up to us now to present proposals for the city to actually continue. But my prayer is one, at times the leadership are actually receptive, the leadership at times would actually be cooperative, but it is the implementation that actually holds the government in many instances. So my prayer is that we may see this positive energy, we may see this welcoming attitude, not just end with welcoming full stop, but turn into actions to make sure that we actually produce this document. So there's a welcoming, I think, attitude to the city.
How's the Arch doing now?
The Arch has retired, and I think is still enjoying his retirement. at home.
As well,
yes.
Thanks very much for coming through.
Thank you.
The very Reverend of the Johannesburg Anglican Cathedral, Reverend Xolani Dlwati.